I was 29 years old when this started, living alone in a small rental house in a mid-sized city in the Midwest. I worked as a pediatric nurse, 12-hour shifts, rotating schedule, the kind of job that makes you good at staying calm under pressure, and very bad at keeping normal sleep hours. I was practical, organized, the kind of person who has a fire escape plan and keeps a first aid kit in her car. I was not the kind of person things like this happen to. I want you to hold on to that. Because one of the most dangerous things you can believe is that you are too smart, too careful, too aware for something like this to happen to you. That belief is exactly what almost got me killed. It started in March. I'd been in the house about 8 months, long enough to feel settled, to know my neighbors, to stop double-checking the locks every night. The street was quiet, older neighborhood, mostly families and retirees. The kind of street where people wave from their driveways and leave vegetables from their gardens on each other's porches. The first thing I noticed was the car. A dark blue sedan, older model, parked across the street and 2 houses down. This sounds like nothing. It was nothing for a while. A car parked on a residential street is about the least alarming thing in the world. But I started noticing it because of when it was there, not during the day, not on weekends when someone might have visitors. It appeared at night, always after 10 p.m., and it was always gone before 7 a.m. I noticed it first on a Tuesday, then Thursday, then the following Monday, then 3 nights in a row. I told myself it was someone visiting a neighbor, night shift worker, parking away from their own house to avoid waking their family. Any number of boring explanations. I made a mental note and moved on. The second thing I noticed was the gate. My backyard had a wooden privacy fence with a self-latching gate on the side of the house. I was obsessive about that gate. Not for any conscious reason, just habit. Every time I came in through the backyard, I'd latch it behind me. Every time. I'd been doing it for 8 months without thinking. In the 3rd week of March, I came home from a night shift at 7:30 a.m. and the gate was unlatched. I stood at the side of my house in my scrubs, staring at it, running through explanations. Wind? It was a heavy gate, not the kind the wind moves. An animal? The latch required you to press a lever down with your thumb. No animal was doing that. A neighbor cutting through, possible, but no one had ever asked. And it would have been an odd thing to do without mentioning it. I latched it. I went inside. I tried to forget about it. 4 days later, it was unlatched again. Here's something I want to explain because it's important to understanding how these situations unfold and why smart, capable people don't just immediately call the police. Nothing that was happening was reportable. That's the word I kept coming back to. A car parked on a public street is not a crime. An unlatched gate could be explained a dozen innocent ways. If I'd called the police and said, "There's a car I don't recognize parked near my house and my gate keeps coming unlatched," they would have taken a report to make me feel better and nothing else would have happened. I knew this. So I kept gathering data the way nurses do, looking for a pattern that was definitive enough to act on. This was a mistake. I know that now, but I also know that most people in my position would have done the same thing. The third sign was the window. My bedroom was at the back of the house, overlooking the backyard. I had blinds, the horizontal slatted kind, and I kept them closed at night. In early April, I came home from a day shift and noticed that one of the slats near the bottom was bent outward, just slightly. Just enough that if you stood outside the window and pressed your finger against it, You could create a small gap to look through from outside. I sat on my bed and stared at that bent slat for a long time. My brain was working very hard to produce an innocent explanation and finding nothing. I lived alone. No one had been in my house. The blinds were new. I'd put them up myself 6 months ago, and I would have noticed a bent slat. Someone had stood outside my bedroom window and bent the slat with their finger to look inside. I replaced the blinds that weekend. I put a bar lock on the window. I told myself I was being proactive, not reactive, that this was still in the realm of precaution rather than emergency. I did not call the police. I did not tell anyone. I should have. I should have immediately. His name, I would learn later, was Raymond Curl. He was 38 years old. He worked a warehouse job on the east side of the city. He had no prior criminal record, which was both surprising and, in retrospect, not. Because people like Raymond are often very careful. They take their time. They do reconnaissance. They escalate slowly, staying just under the threshold of obvious threat, banking on exactly the reluctance I was feeling to make a definitive report. I didn't know his name yet. I didn't know anything about him. I only knew the blue sedan, the gate, the window. What I didn't know, what I had no way of knowing yet, was that he had been watching me for nearly 6 weeks before I noticed the car. He told the police later that he had first seen me at a gas station 3 miles from my house. I'd stopped to fill up after a shift, still in my scrubs, and he'd been at the next pump. He didn't explain what it was about me that made him decide to follow me home. He said he just wanted to know where I lived. He followed me home. He made a note of my address. He began driving past, then stopping, then parking. He learned my schedule from watching when I left, when I came home, which lights came on in which rooms. He learned about the gate. He had been in my backyard, not once, 7 times. The bent window slat was the 6th visit. The moment everything changed happened on a Wednesday night in late April. I was home. It was after 11 p.m. I'd had a rare evening off and spent it doing laundry and watching television. The spectacularly ordinary Wednesday of someone who works too hard and treasures doing nothing. I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. It was my neighbor from 2 doors down, an older man named Howard, 70s, retired. The kind of neighbor who knows everyone's business in the least intrusive way possible. Not from nosiness, but from just paying attention, being outside, being present. "Sarah," he said when I picked up, "I'm sorry to call so late. I need you to stay on the phone with me while I tell you something." Something in his voice made me sit down. "There's a man outside your house," Howard said. "He's been out there for about an hour. He's parked down the street, but he's not in his car. He's on foot on the sidewalk in front of your place. He's been going back and forth. I've been watching him from my window." My heart was already hammering. "What does he look like?" Howard described him. Medium height, dark jacket, baseball cap, standing on the public sidewalk, technically doing nothing wrong, but doing it for an hour. At 11 p.m., in a neighborhood where no one walked at 11 p.m. "I've seen that car before," Howard said quietly. "Not just tonight, several times, late at night. I should have said something sooner, Sarah. I'm sorry." "Call 911, I said. My voice was calm. Nurse's voice, the one I use when I'm telling a parent that their child needs emergency care and I need them to stay focused. "Tell them what you see. I'm going to lock my doors and stay on the phone with you." "Already dialing on my other phone," Howard said. I went through my house in under 60 seconds. Front door, deadbolt and chain. Back door, deadbolt. Side door, deadbolt. Every ground floor window locked and checked. I turned off the lights so I wasn't visible from outside. I went to the center of the house, the hallway away from every external wall, and I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall and my phone in both hands. Howard stayed on the line with me the whole time. The police arrived in 4 minutes. They found Raymond Curl on the sidewalk in front of my house. He had a backpack. Inside the backpack were zip ties, a length of rope, and a folding knife. He was arrested that night. What followed was the part that no one tells you about, the aftermath, which is in some ways harder than the event itself, because the event has adrenaline and urgency and clear things to do, while the aftermath has none of those things. Just time and the knowledge of what almost happened. I learned about the 7 backyard visits from the police. I learned about the gas station. I learned that Raymond had been the one to bend the window slat, and that on the 6th visit, he had tried the back door and found it locked and left. 1 locked door. That was the margin. I learned from a detective who was kinder than she needed to be that Raymond had done this before. A woman in another city 7 years ago. She'd moved away before anything escalated, and no charges were filed because, as was the pattern, nothing technically criminal had happened until it suddenly, terribly did. He'd been careful, he'd been patient, he'd slipped through every gap in the system that the system didn't know how to close. "You did the right things," the detective told me. "I should have called sooner," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said, "but you're here. A lot of people aren't." Raymond Curley was charged with stalking, criminal trespassing, and possession of materials with intent to commit a crime. He pled guilty 11 months later. He is currently serving a 7-year sentence. I no longer live in that house. I moved 2 months after the arrest. Not because I was required to, but because I could not walk through the back door, could not cross my own backyard without feeling him there. The house was never really mine again after I knew what had happened in it. Some spaces get poisoned by knowledge. You have to leave and start over. I'm okay, that's not a performance or a brave front. I went to therapy, I did the work, and I'm genuinely okay in a way that I wasn't for a long time. But I tell this story because I know there are people watching this right now who are in the middle of their own version of it. Noticing things, making excuses, waiting for something definitive, feeling foolish for being afraid. I want to tell you what I wish someone had told me. You are not being paranoid. Here's the truth about how predatory stalking works. It is designed to be deniable. Every single step is calibrated to stay just below the line of what feels reportable, what feels real, what you can justify taking seriously. The car is just a car. The gate could be the wind. The window could have been like that for months. You are encouraged by your own reasonable mind, by the fear of seeming hysterical, by the way women especially are conditioned to doubt their own instincts, to keep waiting for something more definitive. There is no more definitive. There is only the slow escalation, and the moment it finally escalates, all the way. So here's what I want you to take from this. Trust the feeling, not the explanation, not the justification. The feeling in your body that says something is wrong before your mind has had time to talk you out of it. That feeling is not weakness, it is information. It is your nervous system doing its job. Document everything, dates, times, descriptions, photographs, if you can get them safely. Not because you're building a case, because when you go to report it, you will need specifics. A car has been parked outside my house is hard to act on. A dark blue 2009 Honda Accord has been parked outside my house 11 times between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. over the past 6 weeks, and my back gate has been found unlatched twice. That is a pattern that is actionable. Tell someone, anyone, a neighbor, a friend, a family member, a coworker. The instinct to handle it quietly, to not make a fuss, to wait until you're sure. That instinct will isolate you. Howard could only help me because he was already watching, already paying attention. He was watching because he was that kind of neighbor, but also because I had mentioned weeks earlier that I'd noticed a car I didn't recognize. He hadn't forgotten. Report it before it feels serious enough to report. I know that sounds counterintuitive. Report it anyway. A paper trail has value even when nothing comes of it immediately. If things escalate, and with someone like Raymond, they always escalate, that earlier report becomes part of the picture. It tells authorities this has been ongoing. It tells them you were not imagining things. You do not have to be certain to ask for help. Howard came to see me before I moved. We stood on my front porch in the late afternoon light, and he brought a plant from his garden, a small potted rosemary, the way people in his generation bring food to funerals. I should have said something sooner, he said again. He'd said it before in the days after the arrest, and I could tell he was carrying it. Howard, I said, you called. That's what matters. He nodded slowly. He looked old and sad, and also, underneath it, the particular kind of relieved that belongs to people who almost witnessed a terrible thing and didn't. You take care of yourself, he said. You too, I said. I drove away with the rosemary on the passenger seat. I still have it. It's on my kitchen windowsill in my new apartment. 3rd floor, good locks, a building with a doorman. It's leggy now, the way rosemary gets when it hasn't been pruned, but it's alive. Some days that feels like enough. Outro. Read quietly. If you are currently being stalked or believe you might be, the National Stalking Helpline and the Victim Connect Resource Center can provide guidance on documentation, reporting, and safety planning. You are not overreacting. You are not alone. Trust the feeling.